Here we are today with Grandma. We've got a lazy snow day here. We've got snow outside and can't leave the house, so it's okay to look terrible today. And Grandma just had a birthday. She turned 81, so we are doing an interview with her, and she is going to tell us a story about growing up on a farm in Indiana. Here we go.
Yes. One thing we had on the farm was chickens. 600 white leghorn chickens. And we sold eggs twice a week. The chicken house had 2 doors that were on rollers. And one night, Daddy heard something in the chicken house. And he went out in the backyard and he took his .44 Colt pistol and shot straight up in the air. And when the chickens stopped flying, he said, "Now I aim to miss one time." And he said, "The next time I'll count to 10 and I won't aim to miss whoever is in range." And he started counting. And before he got to 10, there was nobody in sight.
One bad guy ran behind the barn, and the other chicken thief ran
to the woods. and that took care of that episode, except for gathering up the chickens, which were in 1,000 feet of all directions. And we carried them back in and put them on the nest, on the roost.
The part about your dad's foot.
Dad had his ankle cut through by a mowing machine when he was 10 years old. And he'd been nursing, sitting under an apple tree in the edge of the hayfield that the hired man was mowing with 2 horses and a mowing machine, which was very silent. You hardly even noticed the little click, click of the blade passing through the grass.
Yeah.
And he didn't notice it because he was sitting in the figure 4 position with his right foot stuck straight out and his left foot under his right knee. And holding this little sparrow and wrapping it up in his handkerchief. So the mowing machine cut through the ankle and left only the tendon at the back of the heel. It didn't touch the bone of his leg at all. And Grandma had heard him scream and went running to get him. The hired hand was bringing him, but she doesn't know she needed it, but she knew how to do a tourniquet and stop the blood, and the hired hand went back to get the horses and hook up the buggy, and the nearest little town, it had about a grocery store and service station and a dozen houses.
Yeah.
And one of the houses had a new doctor. And he was just out of school. And he had pretty nice little office probably, but not well enough equipped, of course. He told Grandma he was just going to clip that tendon there in the back, and Everett would have a peg leg.
Yeah.
Everybody knew they were always uncomfortable, however long you were fortunate enough to live with them. And Grandma said, "No, you don't." She said, "Sew it back on." And he said, "Well, I haven't got anything in my office to sew with but a little catgut. I don't have any way to attach any tendons or muscles or bone." And she said, "You sew and I'll pray." And he said, "But he'll get gangrene, and it'll be harder on him if he don't die at that and lose so much blood." And he'd already passed out. And Grandma said, "You sew and I'll pray." So he did. And he didn't go to the hospital. He went home for Grandma to take care of. He had to be picked up and carried everywhere he needed to go, wherever that might be.
For about a year, wasn't it?
For a year, and then they got him a pair of lineman's boots that lace clear up to your knees. And then, well, he still wore those when they moved. He had them on in the picture where they sold the farm and moved to Kansas. He left Grandma and the kids, but anyway, I mean, he would have left all the kids, but the court give them to Grandma, but her daddy said he couldn't afford to keep them. He was a Wesleyan Methodist preacher, and he had 3 churches, but that wouldn't support. He was already keeping his 2 grandchildren. Another son's wife had died.
Yeah.
So Grandpa took the kids to Kansas.
Yeah.
And then after he got older, he rode horses and in rodeos and all kind, anything to ride a horse instead of walking, because he had that problem with that. And as he wore a high-top policeman's boot when I remember him, and every night he rubbed wintergreen oil and alcohol on that ankle. I always had that nice fresh smell. It's the same as in muscle rub that you buy today.
Yeah, I like to smell muscle rub.
And that...
But he got to keep his foot and didn't have a peg leg, and that was a big old answered prayer. And another answered prayer is just Grandma herself, because she wasn't supposed to have lived.
Yes, when my sister was 3, she got all excited because they had told her that she was going to get a little brother or sister. And living in Oklahoma, out in the southwest corner, almost Colorado and Kansas, was pretty boring for a 3-year-old, and from then on, that little brother didn't happen.
He was lost.
He was lost, and she was always lonesome, and all she had to play with was a dog and a ball in the shed, and everything shed besides the house. And it was 10 miles to the nearest house, which was her girlfriend. Had a girlfriend that lived there. And she could see that house, and her name was Jessie May. And Jessie May, one time, Sis came home crying to Mama and said, "Jessie May's got aunts and uncles and nieces and nephews and uncles and cousins, and I ain't nothing to nobody."
Oh.
And somebody had a baby and left the baby in a box on somebody's doorstep. A planned procedure, no doubt. But anyway, ever after that, when Mabel went to town, she made Daddy stop at all the boxes that somebody had thrown out along the way as they compacted down in their Model Ts or wagons or whatever they went to town in, and threw out the excess boxes, and she went to look to see if there might be a baby in there. So then the day came that the doctors told Mother that she had a tumor.
And then
the tumor
kicking.
kicked. And she knew what that meant. That there would be a baby at our house. So she told the doctor about that, and he called in another doctor, and then he called in another doctor. And the three of them told Daddy that he needed to talk Mother into letting them abort that baby because Mother would die. Her health was very bad. She had congestive heart failure and yellow jaundice and pre-diabetes and
all kinds
of terrible things. And she said, we're going to have a baby. And Daddy said, I wouldn't blame her if she didn't, because you fellows know what you're doing. And if you say that she's not going to live, and the baby wouldn't be normal if it did live. It wouldn't live to grow up, certainly. And she said, we're going to have a baby. And my sister wrote in my first little baby book, they had, this baby's answered prayer. And Mother did live 37 years. And she did die without either leg, but she was planning on being in bed and couldn't turn over, and there would not be a baby bed for this little baby Carolyn Jean. She was going to sleep in her grandma's arms all the time because she couldn't turn over and squish her. Unfortunately, this seemed to be causing me some trouble, and then my mother called a neighbor and said, take me to a nursing home because I don't want to be the cause of anything happening to that baby. But she only lived 3 weeks after she got to the nursing home.
So my grandma didn't quite make it to see me, but she lived a pretty long life. She lived up into her 70s. And this little baby right here, we can see she's kicking for a long time. And this video is 13.5 minutes long. I'm fixing to wrap it up because I had to delete the one we did yesterday. It went over 15. Stay tuned for a part 2.